Hello everybody, I'm Seth Henshaw and I'm back again with another video about historic architecture where I share some of the things that I've found to help you to understand and appreciate architecture in the United States. And I wanted to talk today about ghost towns. I went to see a ghost town recently that's between Pottstown and Reading in Pennsylvania, which is called Morlatton Village, and I'll show you some video from that in just a minute. This is the time of the year where people are interested in sort of spooky things, so I thought I would just discuss what it means to be a ghost town and whether you think that Morlatton Village is one, because there are really two sort of definitions of a ghost town that are slightly contradictory. One of them is a little bit more common than the other one, but the other one is used from time to time. So I wanted to give you sort of an introduction to Morlatton Village, and then at the end of the video to discuss just real quickly whether Morlatton Village fits either definition for a ghost town. Now this video will be a little different from my last two, which discussed early architecture of the 1700s, one about the Downingtown log house and one about the Georgian style using Pottsgrove Manor in Pottstown. So this is going to be a different kind of video from the two that I've done most recently. I have different types of videos coming up for you that I hope you'll find entertaining and interesting and informative, right? Yeah, so let's hop right into it. At the heart of Morlatton Village are four 18th century houses that are currently owned by the Historic Preservation Trust of Berks County. The houses immediately to the east and to the west of these four historic houses are also old, but mainly from around 1900, and they're privately owned. The two older houses are built south of the road, and they actually face to the Schuylkill River and not to the road. The older of these is the Mouns Jones House, which was built in 1716 and is the oldest documented house in Berks County. It's a two-story, three-bay stone house, and you can see right over the door is the date stone. This was a common location for date stones in this part of Pennsylvania in the 1700s, although by around 1800 it was much more common for this for the date stone to be located up in the upper part of the gable on the end wall. I wanted to point out a few things about the back side of the house, which faces the road today. First is this corner chimney that you see on the left. This was a really common thing, especially in Swedish houses in this area in the 18th century. And then of course on the right is the beehive oven, which is a really fabulous thing to have survive in a historic house like this. Just to the east of the Mouns Jones House is a house that's variously called either the Michael Kulp House or the Bridgekeeper's House. This is another early 18th century building. It's an example of what's called the hall plan, which means that it only has one interior room. Then you have to walk down this graveled road that connects back to the main road where the other two houses are in Morlatton Village. As you get back to the road, the first building that you come to is the George Douglas House. This building and the one that we're going to look at after this were both built in the 1760s, and they face onto the road to Reading, unlike the earlier two houses here in Morlatton Village, which faced onto the Schuylkill River. This house was built in three sections, obviously, and I want to show you a tip that you can use, especially for houses before 1900, to establish the chronology of the building. This building has larger sections to the west and the smallest to the east. And you can see that the western section is a center hall Georgian, which has this pent roof that they've just rebuilt. Then there's this two-story, three-bay section, and then a one-story section. If you draw a line between the two-story sections, what you'll notice is that the windows of the section to the right are actually built up against this line. Since masonry houses of this era really needed to have strong corners, this is super evidence that the three-bay section is an addition unto the five-bay section. The three-bay section has really interesting keystone lintels over the windows and doors, and as you can see, all of the windows are really nice 12 over 12 units, which you would expect for a house of the 1700s. So let's go around to the west side and then to the back of the house. You can see here that the cornice wraps around, so this is a cornice return. And also the end wall here is much less formal. The stone is not as coarse as it is on the front. It's more rubble stone. As we come to the back, you'll see a traditional approach to the rear of Georgian houses, where the second floor has this one window that's different. That window right there is a landing window that's at the top of the stairs. And as we move a little bit further to the east, you'll see that the two sections aren't actually aligned at the rear. And I want to show you this door right here, because this door is the door that I put on the front of my book. So this is a door that is actually on a house. It's not a door on an outbuilding. Now we're walking around the one-story section, and you'll see right here that if you know what to look for, this window right here used to be a door, but it's gotten reduced, and there was another window towards the corner that's gotten filled in. Now let's take a look at the fourth building here in Morlatton Village. This is the White Horse Inn, which was built in 1762 and then enlarged about half a century later. And you can see the vertical seam right here, how the windows to the left are right up against that seam, which indicates that that's part of the addition. One thing that's interesting about the windows here is that the windows on the earlier section are 12/12 units, but the windows on the addition are actually smaller, 9/6 units, which was common with the federal style. Now let's take a closer look at the original section of the building. So what style is this? Some people would consider this to be Georgian because of the symmetry and because of the 12/12 windows. I would actually expect a Georgian house to have a few more Georgian features, particularly on the interior, where this house does not have the center hall Georgian plan. So to me, this house is a colonial style building, which again is a label that McAllister does not recognize, but a label that most of the SHPOs in the eastern United States would recognize. You'll see it has this really nice coarse stonework on the front. One of the parts of the stonework, of course, are the keystone lintels over the windows. You see this hood over the two-leaf entrance. This again is a Georgian style feature, and of course it has the benches right outside the door. Let's take a look at their sign. Actually, it's hard to read it there. Let's look at the other side. This has the name of the business and the year that it opened. This is a typical kind of sign that you would see in the 18th century for a business. In the back you can see the house next door. It was built about 1900. Now let's go around the east side of this original section of the building. Here, this end wall will show you some of the typical features that you would see in the mid-1700s, including the cornice return, and also that this is a rubble stone wall, even though the front is coarse stone. Let's go back to the front and we'll take a look at this federal section. Something that's kind of unusual about this is that the section is actually not symmetrical, which was something that was continued in the federal period. And as we round the corner, you'll see again, the end wall is a rubble stone wall. It's not coarse like the front. And the frame addition on the back is actually fairly recent. When I went to Morlatton Village, I really didn't expect to be able to go inside any of the buildings, but I had the opportunity to go inside the White Horse Inn, and I wanted to show you some things that I found. As you go in the front door, the first thing that you see is this hearth. And this is not the normal location of a hearth in a house. In taverns, however, this is a very common thing for the hearth to actually face the door. So as soon as a person came in, that person could tell if it would be possible to get heated food right then. Now let's look over in the east end of this room. This is a space where the chimney would normally be found in a house, but in this case, instead of having a chimney there, is where they have the stairs to the second floor. In the colonial period, when people built houses that had 2 rooms per floor, one way that they did it would be to have the 2 rooms side by side, which is the hall and parlor plan. And the other one is to have a front room and a back room. Some of the houses that were designed this way are what's called a Penn plan house, which has nothing to do with William Penn, although it's spelled the way his last name was. This house is not really a Penn plan house, although the back room is a kitchen, and the kitchen hearth is right there on the other side of this formal fireplace in the tavern room. Now let's go into the early 19th century section. As you go out of the core into this section, you can see that they have a large walk-in kitchen fireplace, a hearth right there, with a batten door to the left that accesses a little storage area. Then to the right is the bar area where they would have kept their alcoholic drinks for people to buy. And as we continue to turn, it has this really interesting corner cupboard right here. Okay, so let's go back outside and we'll consider the original question that I began this video with. Specifically, is Morlatton Village a ghost town? The official definition of a ghost town is a place where you have some buildings but no people live there, or very few people live there. Morlatton Village is not a really good example that would fit that definition, because a caretaker does live in one of these houses, and people also live in the houses that are nearby, both to the east and to the west. However, we also have the secondary definition of a ghost town, which is just a place that happens to have several buildings that are haunted. And that's one of those things that I'll have to leave to each one of you to decide for yourself whether this meets that definition, since I'm not an expert about haunted properties. Anyway, I hope you found this to be really enjoyable, and if you are interested in more information about houses from the 18th century, check out the 2 videos that I did most recently, and I hope you have a great weekend.